I have to tell you that this is probably the most difficult first 5 feature I've worked on so far. We're going to be talking about my first 5 video game opening sequences, and there are so many incredible video game openings, like Batman Arkham City, where you were imprisoned as Bruce Wayne at the beginning of the game, or Fallout 3, where you emerge from the phony comfort of Vault 101, or even the seminal train sequences from both Half-Life 1 and Half-Life 2. The list of terrific video game beginnings is very long, and we're going to dig into some of those with your help. But first, here are my first 5 video game opening sequences. Starting off with number 5 is Super Metroid. The opening of Nintendo's out-of-this-world action-adventure was just brilliant. The game kicks off with a report that Samus Aran is typing up, detailing the events of the first 2 Metroid games. After that, it's set up as a bit of a training mission as you enter this dormant space colony ship called Ceres Station. You find dead bodies on the ground, and it looks like something horrible went down. You end up in a room where you face this giant monster called Ridley and have to fight this fearsome creature, and then it leaves you behind as it zooms off, holding the Metroid hatchling in its claws. Then a self-destruct timer goes off and you have to escape the station as it lurches back and forth and you're trying to navigate these crazy jumps. It is incredibly stressful. You do manage to get out just as the station explodes, and then you land on the planet Zebes to start the real adventure of the game. Now, I've played this opening sequence a million times over the years, and this just makes you want to stay with the game. It's so hard to put the game down because this is so effective, and I recognize the brilliance of the design, and we're talking about a team of developers that didn't have, a massive budget to work with or a massive group of people to put it all together with, but they built something cinematic and indelible, and that's why Super Metroid is number 5 on my list. Number 4 for me is Assassin's Creed 2, and this is probably the most easygoing of my first 5 list here because the pacing of the opening sequence is quite languid and very human. You start off playing as Desmond Miles, voiced by Nolan North, as you escape an Abstergo facility with the help of Lucy Stillman, who's played by Kristen Bell. Before you escape Abstergo, though, you get into an Animus and connect to Ezio Auditore as a baby. You actually control the arms and legs. It's incredible. Then you race out of there and make it to a hideout and meet some other rebels and jump back into an Animus and start to get acquainted with Ezio and his family and their life in Florence in the 15th century. You learn the core mechanics: climbing, fighting, free running, healing yourself, as you meet various members of Ezio's community, and then eventually you end up discovering your father's secret assassin's outfit, and you learn that your family has been embroiled in something huge. There is a dramatic betrayal, and you as Ezio watch helplessly as your beautiful life is destroyed, and you are forced to flee and begin your quest for revenge. You really feel connected to Ezio Auditore by the time this is over. And there's been a lot of Assassin's Creed games, and I think all of them that have come since Assassin's Creed 2 have really learned some valuable lessons there. It is always that historical setting that is the most amazing part of the design and the storytelling in Assassin's Creed, and this just hit all of the correct notes. You really, really care about this character that you're playing and the world that's crafted for him. And it was just such impeccable storytelling with beautiful, beautiful voice work by all of the actors involved too. That's why it's such an incredibly important opening. Number 3 is Bioshock, and you knew that this was going to be on this list. This is such a mysterious and beautiful opening. It's so creepy. You start off on a plane, and you're about to have a cigarette, which kind of signifies that it's a different time period. And then all of a sudden, the plane erupts into a crash dive into the water, and you land in the water, and you find yourself swimming up, and as you emerge from the waves, you see this really creepy-looking lighthouse, and you start swimming towards it amongst the screams and the flames and the wreckage of the plane all around you. It's incredible. Now you get into the lighthouse and you see this giant statue of Andrew Ryan, and before you know it, you're whisked into a submersible, which takes you on this underwater journey through the city of Rapture. and you are just blown away by the beauty of the imagery before you and how it's sort of decrepit and falling apart and kind of creaky, but it's still gorgeous and it's teeming with ocean life. And then your submersible gets to its destination and a voice on the radio beckons you forward.
I don't know how you survived that plane crash, but I'm never going to want to question Providence.
And then quickly you're introduced to the grotesque violence of the splicers, and within moments you've beaten one to death and then injected an electrobolt plasmid into your hands that makes you almost pass out. As a little sister and Big Daddy walk by in your haze, you realize that you're about to go on one of the wildest rides you could ever possibly imagine. Number 2 in my first 5 list is for The Last of Us. Now, this is a devastating opener for a game and one that makes me play through tears every time. We're introduced to Joel and his daughter Sarah, who have a really sweet and close relationship, which is exemplified by the birthday gift that she gives to her dad. As the opening progresses, Sarah goes to sleep and is awakened by a late phone call. The house is dark and she searches for Joel. And as she moves from room to room, the news on the television suggests something sinister is going on in the outside world. An explosion rattles the windows, and soon Joel returns to load his gun and collect his kid.
Don't go near the doors, just stand back there.
Joel's brother Tommy is coming to pick them up and drive them to safety, but before he gets there, a clicker bursts in and Joel is forced to kill an infected former neighbor in front of his daughter.
Jimmy, just stay back! Jimmy, I am warning you! Go!
They manage to leave in Tommy's truck and drive through a truly horrifying, demolished, and chaotic small town before their vehicle is slammed into, forcing the trio to try to get away on foot, with Joel carrying the wounded Sarah in his arms. There are terrifying images all around them, and they are chased into a bar by the infected, forcing Tommy to hold the door while Joel and Sarah flee. But before they can, they encounter a military man in a gas mask who is ordered to shoot at the father and his daughter. As he gets a shot off, Tommy comes in to the rescue and puts the military man down, but not before we see that one of his bullets connected and Sarah has been mortally wounded.
Sarah?
Joel loses his daughter and his soul, and we as players are left absolutely gutted as the beautiful nightmare of The Last of Us begins. Number 1 is Uncharted 2. Now, when I ask people what they think is the best video game opening, this is the first game that always comes to my mind. Naughty Dog achieved something extraordinary with this entire game, but it was propelled to another level on the strengths of its groundbreaking opening sequence. After a quote from Marco Polo, we start off in a train as Nathan Drake wakes up to realize that he's bleeding profusely and in mortal danger. The train creaks and adjusts, and within seconds we realize that it's dangling perilously off of a snowy cliff. Drake has to clamber up the side of the train, cautiously jumping and leaping to crumbling handholds as he, and you as him, makes his way to relative safety. The train eventually gives way and crashes to Earth as you hang on by a thread and flash back to how this all began, introduced to the game's other adventurous protagonists, Harry Flynn and Chloe Sullivan. Eventually, you make your way into the train wreckage on the hill, blasting at surviving clusters of bad guys as you get tossed around by the remaining train cars that all seem to be hell-bent on crashing down the cliff they're jammed up on. As you pass out in the snowstorm, clutching this mysterious blade you've found, you fade back to the beginning of the adventure. It is outstanding work. That's 2 from Naughty Dog in my first 5. 1 and 2. I can't believe it. What a company. But Uncharted 2 is really something special. I've said this before, but this is a game that once I start playing it, I find it like magnetically attracting me to keep playing the game. It's so hard for me to put the controller down and walk away from this. Now, I started this whole process with an innocuous tweet that I sent out to my followers. I asked people what their favorite video game opening was. I got hundreds and hundreds of replies, KFC Skippy suggested something that's very near and dear to my heart, and that's Arkham Asylum, the game that set up the incredible Batman franchise, where we see Batman roll up in his Batmobile and go into Arkham Asylum and encounter the Joker and recognize that the Joker has planned it all along. It's very, very cool. Awesome opener.
I set a trap, and you sprang it gloriously.
With Nail Marwood says, if anyone says anything other than Beatles rock band, yeah, and I do remember they had a very trippy opening sequence for that to kind of get us all hyped to play these classic Beatles tracks. That was some brilliant stuff, and that's a great suggestion, by the way. We've got one from Nick RLC. He says, Doom 2016, Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy X, Bioshock, Tomb Raider 2013, GoldenEye, Brutal Legend, Wolfenstein New Order, Mass Effect 3, and those are just some of the best that springs to his mind. I mean, every time you even just say some of these game titles, I think that's what first pops into our heads is the openings to some of these incredible games. Great suggestions. Our friend Ryan McCaffrey from IGN says Half-Life 1, there are no other correct answers. I looked at the openings for both Half-Life. They're incredible, but they didn't touch my first 5. But we'll hug it out when we see each other, Ryan. Scott Porter, who is an actor who's been in a ton of things, including Friday Night Lights, and he does a lot of voice acting in video games. He played Nightwing in Batman Arkham Knight. He replied, and he wasn't asked to give us a first 5, but he gave us his first 5. He said Portal 2, and you guys remember the incredible sense of humor that game delivered, as well as this beautiful sense of place. Wonderful game.
You might have a very minor case of serious brain damage.
Final Fantasy VII, a lot of people were picking Final Fantasy VII for sure. Bioshock, there it is again. Assassin's Creed 2, there that is again. And then he's got the whole Arkham series, which I can't really dispute. I love those Arkham games as well. He also says Suikoden 2 gets an honorable mention, so clearly this guy doesn't just like to play characters in video games. This is a character that likes to play a lot of video games. I got a reply from Barbara Emack, who is a big YouTuber and actually works at YouTube, and she says Bioshock, which is going to come up again and again. Fantastic choice there, Barbara. Paul Semmel, who is a video game journalist friend I've known for years and years, I think he has also been to all 25 E3s, like I have been. He says The Force Unleashed is the best video game opening. That is a truly epic opening where you get to play as Darth Vader and you get to feel the full power of the dark side of the Force. It was so cool. You got to do so many massive and huge things, and we also get to see the origin story of Starkiller, which is quite heavy, honestly. An incredible opening sequence there for sure.
Come with me.
I got a very cryptic reply from Ashraf A. Ismail, who is the creative director at Ubisoft, who worked on Assassin's Creed Origins and Black Flag, 2 of the best Assassin's Creed games so far. And his message to me was ... wait ... So presumably he is hard at work at Ubi on a new Assassin's Creed that he expects is going to blow our minds. I got a great reply from him, and then lots of people followed up on that reply with, the open mouth wow emoji. And finally, I got a good suggestion from RGT85, who is a fellow YouTuber out there who covers the video game biz. He says Parasite Eve or MGS2, and a lot of people chose Metal Gear Solid 1, but yeah, I think Metal Gear Solid 2, because it was such a tease of the return of Solid Snake in such a dramatic fashion for the PlayStation 2 for the first time.
Who's that?
Incredible production values, and I remember seeing the opening sequence displayed on massive screens at E3 and Konami pulling out all the stops to showcase the incredible fidelity that this new game was going to provide. That was an awesome opening. Great suggestion there, RGT85, and everybody that replied to all of the tweets. Definitely want to hear your comments and tell me all the reasons why I'm wrong for my first 5 down below. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back with new content before you know it, and until then, play forever.